Well, good evening, and I'm going to tell you a story today about my friend Moomin Troll and where he lives in Moomin Valley. Very excitingly, Christmas comes to Moomin Valley. Now, I love the Finn family Moomin Troll stories, and this story has actually been adapted from a story called The Fir Tree by the author Tove Jansson to make it into a lovely picture book, which I'm going to share with you now. So settle down and listen to Christmas Comes to Moomin Valley. And there is Moomin Valley, all under a blanket of snow. It was winter in Moomin Valley. Under the ice, the sea was silent and still. Under the ground, all the little creepy crawlies were curled up asleep, and the Moomin family were cosy in bed, sleeping their long winter sleep. They had been asleep since October and planned to continue until spring, as they did every year. But the Hemulan didn't understand this. He was standing on the roof, scrabbling through the thick snow until his woolen gloves became wet and unpleasant. He was searching for a roof hatch. Those trolls just sleep and sleep, and here am I, working my tail off just because Christmas is coming, he muttered. Finally, he found the hatch. He couldn't remember whether it opened inward or outward. He stamped on it carefully. The hatch swung open, and down tumbled the Hemulan into darkness. "This is most un-Hemulanish," exclaimed the Hemulan, as he landed in a pile of clutter that the Moomin family was storing in the attic until spring. Now, he was well and truly annoyed. He stomped downstairs, threw open the door to the drawing room and shouted, "Christmas is coming, and here you all are asleep. This won't do at all." A cold, troubling draught blew into Moomin Troll's dreams. A heavy sigh from deep beneath the blanket. The little troll wanted nothing more than to carry on sleeping and dreaming of sunny summer afternoons. But alas, he could not, for the Hemulan began yanking off his blanket and shouting at him to wake up. "Is it spring already?" mumbled Moomin Troll. "Is it our sleep over?" "Spring," said the Hemulan. "Christmas is coming. Don't you see? Christmas. I've got so much to do, and on top of it all, they send me here to drag you out of bed. Everyone is rushed off their feet, and nothing is ready. I've had quite enough of you sleeping. So get up." And he stomped back upstairs and disappeared through the roof hatch. There are the Moomins. "Mama, wake up," said Moomin Troll. "Something dreadful is coming. It's called Christmas." "What's that?" said Moomin Mama sleepily, poking her nose out from under her blanket. "I'm not sure," said Moomin Troll, "but the Hemulan said that nothing is ready and everyone is rushing about. Sounds like we ought to prepare." Then he woke Snork Maiden and whispered, "Don't be alarmed, but something dreadful is coming." "Everybody stay calm," said Moomin Papa. "We'll investigate the matter." They followed the Hemulan's wet footprint up to the attic and climbed out onto the roof of Moomin House. There's Moomin Papa. He's going to go up. But what was this? The whole of Moomin Valley was buried in wet cotton wool. It covered the mountains and the trees and the river and their entire house, and it was cold. "Is this Christmas?" asked Moomin Papa in astonishment. He scooped up a pawful of wet cotton wool and inspected it. "I wonder if it grew out of the ground or fell from the sky. It must have hurt if it all came falling down in one go," he said. "Silly Papa, it's snow. It does fall from the sky, but only a little at a time," said Moomin Troll. A friend of the Moomin family came by with a fir tree and noticed them sitting on the roof. "Oh, so you're finally awake. Better hurry if you're going to get a fir tree before dark," she called. "A fir tree? Whatever for?" said Moomin Papa. But she hadn't the time to stay and talk more. "She says we have to go and get a fir tree before dark," whispered Snort Maiden. "That means Christmas must be coming tonight. And evidently one needs a fir tree to survive it," said Moomin Papa. "What are we waiting for? Put your scarves and gloves on before you go looking for fur. Meanwhile, I'll get a lovely fire going in the stove," said Moomin Mama, who hated the thought of any living creature feeling cold. Little creatures like woodies, toffles and creeps, for example. One such pitiful creature was sitting under the veranda shivering. She invited it in for a nice cup of tea. Oh, that's kind of Moomin Mama, isn't it? The others went into the forest to chop down a fir tree. But which should they choose? Perhaps Christmas demanded a certain type of tree. "Do you suppose we're meant to hide in it?" wondered Moomin Troll. "I don't know," said Moomin Papa. "I haven't the foggiest idea about any of this." If so, we had better get a big tree, so there's room enough for all of us," said Snort Maiden. "This will do," said Moomin Papa, and swung his axe at the nearest fir tree, which was not especially big. He was tired of looking. The snow was deep and his paws were cold. "We can always squash together if need be," Papa said, and he chopped down the tree. They carried the fir tree home and planted it in the snow. "Well, here it is," said Moomin Papa. "If only we knew what to do with it." "Wowee, it's beautiful!" exclaimed the little creature who had crept in outside with Moomin Mama. It blushed embarrassed to have said that out loud. "Do you know what a fir tree is for?" asked Moomin Papa. "You have to dress it," whispered the creature. "Dress it? Our clothes aren't big enough," said Moomin Mama. "Not with clothes, with pretty things. The prettiest things you have, or so I heard." Then the little creature buried its face in its paws and scuttled behind Moomin Mama to hide. Moomin Papa thought about what the little creature had said. "I think I'm beginning to understand. If the idea is to make the fir tree beautiful, then it can't be a hiding place. It must be a way to win over Christmas." They started to dress the fir tree with beautiful things, shells, beads and crystals. The top they put a red silk rose that Moomin Papa had once given to Mama. They dressed the tree with all the loveliest things they could find to appease the mysterious powers of winter. "Perhaps Christmas won't be so terrible now," said Moomin Troll. Once they'd finished decorating the tree, they saw a red figure approaching. It was Mrs. Fillyjonk in a frightful hurry. "Look at our fir tree," called Moomin Troll. Oh my, what a mess! But you always have been quite peculiar types." "No time to stop. Must get the food ready for Christmas," called Mrs. Fillyjonk. "Food for Christmas?" said Moomin Troll. "Does it eat too?" "Goodness gracious, one simply must have food for Christmas," said Mrs. Fillyjonk impatiently as she sledged on down the hill. Moomin Mama rushed straight into the kitchen and started bustling about. She made soured milk and blueberry pie and eggnog and all manner of Moomin family favourites. "Do you think Christmas is very hungry?" she asked worriedly. "It can hardly be hungrier than I am," said Papa, looking longingly at the delicious food. Dusk was falling, and down in the valley candles were starting to appear in all the windows. Lights twinkled under the trees from all the little nests and in the branches. Candlelight flickered and danced across the snow. "I suppose Christmas likes candles," thought Moomin Troll. Moomin Troll gathered up all the candles he could find. He stuck them in the snow around the fir tree and lit them. One by one, they were all burning bright to soften the darkness and Christmas. The others served up the food into bowls. All was quiet in Moomin Valley. Everyone must have gone home to await the danger, thought Moomin Troll. A lone figure came ambling through the trees. It was the Hemulin. "Hello! Should we be expecting Christmas any time soon?" asked Moomin Troll. "Leave me alone," the Hemulin said grumpily, and buried his nose in a great long list on which almost everything was crossed out. He muttered something about Christmas presents. "What's the matter?" asked Snork Maiden anxiously. "Has something happened?" "Presents. More and more every year. However will I manage to get them all in time? I'm at my wit's end," the Hemulin said, and continued on his way. "Wait," called Moomin Troll. "Please explain." But the Hemulin didn't answer. He disappeared into the darkness, fretting, just like everybody else, about the arrival of Christmas. The Moomins went inside the house to rummage for presents. Papa selected his finest fishing rod. He wrote, "For Christmas," on a tag and tied it tightly to his gift. Snork Maiden took off her anklet, which was the most beautiful thing she owned. She sighed softly as she wrapped it up in tissue paper. Mama opened her top secret box and took out a book of beautiful paintings. It was the only book of its kind in the whole of Moomin Valley. Moomin Troll's present was so secret and special that no one was allowed to see it. Even when winter was over and spring had come, he refused to tell anyone what he'd given away. They laid the presents out around the fir tree. Then they sat down in the snow and waited for disaster to strike. Time passed, but nothing happened. Only the little creature dared to venture out again. It had brought all its friends and relatives along, a group of little woodies, toffles and creeps, all of whom were equally small and grey and timid. "Happy Christmas!" whispered the creature shyly. "You're certainly the first to think Christmas is happy," said Moomin Papa. "Aren't you afraid what might happen when it comes?" "It's already here," peeped the little creature. "May we take a look? You really do have the most wonderful fir tree." "And so much delicious food," said one of its relatives. "And real presents," squeaked another. The little woodies, toffles and creeps were sitting quite still. They had never had a Christmas of their own. The Moomin family could feel their longing grow stronger and stronger. Eventually, Moomin Mama edged a little closer to Papa and whispered something to him. Papa reflected, then turned to the creatures and said, "Help yourselves. It's all for you." The little creatures could hardly believe their ears. Could the fir tree and presents and the scrumptious food really be for them? Their nose started twitching. For once, they could celebrate Christmas properly. Still, the Moomin family thought it best to stay hidden in the house. Christmas might be angry with them. The Moomin family hid under the table in the drawing room, just in case. They stayed there for a long time and waited. Nothing happened. Eventually, they plucked up the courage to look out of the window. Outside, all the little creatures, the woodies, the toffles and the creeps, were celebrating Christmas. They were eating and drinking and opening presents. They'd never had so much fun. Finally, they climbed the fir tree and attached burning candles to all its branches. "There ought to be a big, great star at the top of this tree," said a little creature's uncle. "Oh," whispered Moomin Mama, "apparently we were supposed to get a star as well. But how could we? The stars are so far away." They looked into the sky, which was bigger and blacker than anything, and saw thousands more glittering stars than there were ever in summer. And then they saw it. The biggest star of all was hanging directly above the fir tree. "I'm sleepy now," said Moomin Mama. "I'm tired of trying to figure out what all this is supposed to mean, but it certainly doesn't seem dangerous." "I'm not afraid of Christmas any more," said Moomin Troll with a yawn. "The Hemulin and Mrs. Fillyjonk and everyone else must have misunderstood." Then they all crawled into their beds and went back to sleep and waited for spring. The Moomin's first Christmas. Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you enjoyed my story. Good night.